Hi, this is Robin Way, the president of Corios. If you're like most of our banking clients involved in the risk management process, chances are excellent you've spent the last 2 to 3 years up to your neck in compliance and regulatory reporting. The model risk management policies that our clients have been developing have been focused on policies and workflows for model development, model deployment, maintenance, and monitoring. You've been assembling business processes and identifying stakeholders in risk model ownership, model validation, internal audit, and senior leadership. Now the real question is how to mechanize and modernize this business process. But if you're not in banking, don't worry. You're going to feel the brunt of this fairly soon too. Medium and small tier banks, insurance companies, brokerages, and the like, we believe are all going to be facing the same music when it comes to providing federal regulators with insights into your model development processes, results, and monitoring procedures. Model risk management policies are important because they help you maintain transparency, validation, and audit capabilities over all the components and process steps involved in predicting likely risk behavior. The regulatory requirements, however, are pretty daunting. This means a lot of time is spent chasing the people who have different pieces of information to help solve the complete puzzle of tracking down model development, deployment, monitoring, and maintenance issues. What this also translates into is a lot of time is reinvested from predicting and managing risk into chasing those people and details. Well, we've been observing this issue for the last couple of years, and we help our clients satisfy regulatory requirements, but put more time back on the clock for actively predicting and managing risk and spend a lot less time chasing people and details around, and give our clients a single place where they can record and monitor all the information about their model risk management processes and assets. And that is why we created the Corios Metronome solution. We've had the opportunity to implement Metronome in over 20 banks in the US and Canada, as well as a number of insurance companies, brokerages, and other financial services institutions. And that involves the implementation of hundreds of models into a centralized model inventory, complete with workflow processes, model performance tracking, workflow, audit, and the like. Whether your interests are in model deployment, in GRC, model performance tracking, the Corios Metronome solution has proven to be a key asset to our clients in putting more time back into the business of risk and being able to satisfy regulators without having to spend so much time on chasing all the people and the details surrounding it. The analytic model inventory process is something that we focus on a lot at Corios. It starts by monitoring account and account risk behavior, transaction volumes, model development data, and the initial hypothesis generation that leads to the initiation of the model development process. Once model owners start to initiate the model development process, they're going to be concerned with what kind of data they have available to them, what kind of data they're going to produce, the models that produce the predicted outcomes, and all the intermediate calculations that are concerned with allowing that model to come to fruition. Model deployment translates the model initiation and development process into something that can be deployed into production systems. Once the model is in production, you'd want to be able to monitor it, model its financial, analytical, and econometric performance, and provide maintenance updates to that model over time as it ages. And as the model ages, you want to be able to create new versions, review those versions, decide which versions of each model are the best model to be using in production at different points in time, and to be able to test and learn champion and challenger models against each other. Finally, that closes the loop by allowing your analytic community in the risk management function to understand all the different components of the analytic model inventory process. There's 8 key steps involved in your typical Metronome implementation: model inventory, workflows, alerts and notifications tied to those workflows, model performance monitoring, version control, audit trail, management reporting, and training and documentation. Let's quickly explore each one of these step by step. In the model inventory, this is a single place for all models and all assets tied to models to be placed in a robust enterprise scale model inventory that can cover any kind of model in the business. The model inventory consists of folders which map to functional units in the business, model projects, versions of models, and then the individual model assets and all of their constituent components. This fits into a easy to manage hierarchical structure. Next, workflows. This is concerned with the people and the steps in the process associated with each model and model asset. Workflows are checklists with tasks, milestones, and assignments to different people in different roles in the organization. Each step in the workflow has a series of status markers that record who's completed which task, who's reviewed that task, did the task need to be redone, what dates were tasks completed, and so on. Anywhere that there's a workflow, there should be a notification so that every player in the lineup knows when they're at bat, when they're on deck, when they need to start warming up, and so on. Here's an example workflow and the alert and notification process tied to it. Let's start at the top where a model owner builds a new model. He's got a due date to build the model, to document the model, to hand off the model to the validator, to his or her manager for approval. When the model owner creates the model, it generates a notification which goes to the next player in the lineup, the model validator. That model validator typically has a series of deadlines and due dates that they have to hit as well. They'll conduct the model validation and review process, which generates a report and also generates a notification when they file that report. All that information goes to the Risk Oversight Committee, who reviews the model, generates a final review, and logs all of that in the model inventory. Along the way, all of these steps are being recorded and placed in the workflow repository. Model performance monitoring focuses on the data flowing through the model, tracking actual customer performance relative to the predictions in the model. These reports date back to 2009, about the time of the Bank of International Settlements Working Paper 14 emergence, and the guidance given to banks around tracking model stability, performance, and calibration. Based on that guidance, we built a series of model monitoring KPI reports, highly visual and instructive to model owners and validators alike to track the model's performance not only at its initial creation, but as it ages over time. Here's an example of a report for a binary classification model like a PD model. It's important to not only know what was the statistical performance of the model, such as the Kolmogorov-Smirnov statistic, at its origin in development time 0, but also to be able to track what is its degradation in time as the model ages and the underlying performance of the model relative to actuals tends to degrade. It's also important to know, as the model ages, should the decisioning thresholds on underwriting, should they be changing in terms of the ideal KS score relative to the traditional cutoff threshold. Finally, here's an example of a report for a LGD model. The charts on the top show the distribution of LGD by risk pools measured in deciles of actual versus estimated, with the worst risk pools on the left and the better risk pools on the right, and how that model distribution has changed from period 0 on the top to period 6 in the middle. Similarly, down at the bottom, this series of charts shows us that estimated LGD and actual LGD map pretty well to each other in the 9 least risky pools. But in the worst risk pool, pool number 1, there's definitely an understatement of estimated LGD with regards to the actual. So that might suggest to the modeler that this is time for this model to be updated. As models age, it's important to provide a clear mechanism for creating new versions of models so that they track performance more effectively. Here's an example of how multiple versions of a given model can be tracked inside the model inventory and overlaid with each other for comparison's sake and for recording. The audit trail tracks not only new versions of model, but really any creation of any new model asset, a change in a model workflow, review and approval of new model assets. Anytime any change is made by any user of the system to any asset in the model inventory, the model audit trail is tracking it. Management reporting is important for providing a clear diagnostic for all stakeholders to know what phase of which workflow models are on, what is the recency of creation of a model asset, who owns which model assets, who is responsible for the next step in any workflow, and so on. Here's an example of a model task status report for a PD model. And this shows us the nesting of various detail steps in a workflow, who's signed off on which tasks, who's approved which tasks, which people future tasks are assigned to, and so on. Reports like this are easy to create because behind the scenes, Corios has created a Metronome performance data mart that has a full copy every night for any object in the model inventory, including model assets, model workflows, audit trail, documents, and notes. Finally, we want to empower your organization to build and sustain the model risk management inventory, workflow, and performance tracking process on your own. So we provide comprehensive training and documentation for all of the steps in this process. And so that summarizes the 8 sets of assets that we produce for you during the course of a metronome implementation. If you're interested in learning more, give us a call. We'd like to help you develop a roadmap for implementing your model risk management policies, mechanizing and modernizing that process so that you can spend less time tracking down people and details, more time actively predicting and mitigating risk for your organization, and satisfying your regulatory requirements. We look forward to working with you.